I used to think turning 60 meant slowing down, the beginning of the end. But one day, I saw my father, at 74, standing in the middle of his garden, beaming as he planted the first seeds of spring. He looked at me and said, "Don't think of yourself as old, son. This is when you truly start to live." Today's video isn't about age. It's about freedom. It's about the things you should let go of after 60. Not because you're weaker, but because you're finally strong enough to choose a life that's lighter, deeper, and more meaningful than ever before. Together, we'll explore why letting go of control over your kids and grandkids can actually lead to stronger, lasting love. Why the kindest people often need to learn how to say no, and how that one word can change everything. And what happens when you finally forgive yourself after carrying regret for so many years. If you're over 60, if you ever felt left behind, misunderstood, or simply want to live these next chapters with more peace and purpose, then this video is for you. Because youth isn't the only beautiful season of life. Growing older can be just as radiant if you learn to let go of the right things and hold on to what truly matters. Let's begin with the very first thing you might want to release to live more peacefully after 60. I remember one of my mother's old friends. Her name was Eleanor. She was a picture of a devoted mom, capable, selfless, and never spared a single thing for her kids. She used to say to my mother, "I'd do everything so my children never have to worry about a thing." But then, when Eleanor turned 68, something happened that she never saw coming. Both of her children moved out of state to start their own lives and rarely called home. She was heartbroken. She was angry, and she started asking herself, "What did I do wrong?" We love our children instinctively. That's not the problem. But love and control are two very different things. At a certain point in life, we have to accept that our children have their own path, with choices, mistakes, and lessons that no one else can live for them, not even their parents. Some people spend their entire retirement worrying for their grown kids, covering the mortgage, paying for the grandkids' tuition, stepping into their children's marriages. But sometimes, in all that worrying, we unintentionally rob our kids of their chance to grow up. A man named Paul, age 62, shared a story during a family counseling session. "I've always helped my son pay off his credit cards, covered his bills, even hired a lawyer when he got into trouble. But now he's 35, unemployed, and still calls me every time he needs $200. I thought I was helping, but now I just feel exhausted and disappointed." Paul isn't alone. Many older adults find themselves stuck in the rescuer role, and in doing so, lose the peace they've earned in their later years. Love doesn't mean carrying everything. Sometimes, the best kind of love is letting your children take responsibility. Let them stumble, so they can learn how to rise. Offer them trust, not constant reminders. Be there as a safe harbor, not a life raft. And just like with your children, it might be time to set boundaries with others in your life too. Because there's one mistake that many kind-hearted people make after turning 60, and it leaves them more hurt than they realize. Let's talk about the second thing you may need to let go of right after this. There was a woman I once met in an art class for older adults. Her name was Linda, 66 years old, widowed, and living alone. She was kind to everyone, always willing to help. She'd give neighbors rides, tend other people's gardens, cook lunch for the local senior center. You couldn't find a more generous soul than Linda. But one day, she stopped coming to class. When I asked around, someone quietly told me what had happened. Linda had been scammed, nearly $5,000, by someone she thought was a friend. They borrowed the money and vanished. Linda had been so kind that she forgot to protect herself. After 60, many people take on a quiet mission, to be kind to everyone. They don't want to say no. They don't want to upset anyone. They fear being seen as selfish. But here's the truth. Kindness does not mean self-sacrifice. In fact, those who try to please everyone are often the ones who get hurt the most because they're easy to take advantage of. They get walked over, and sometimes they lose touch with their own emotions. A 2021 study from the University of Michigan found that Older adults who have a strong, people-pleasing tendency experience higher rates of depression, anxiety, and feelings of isolation. There's also Ray, a 71-year-old grandfather who told his story. He picks up the grandkids from school, cooks meals, house sits while his children go on vacation, all while living with chronic back pain. When asked why he never says no, he just smiled and said, "I don't want to be a burden." But what Ray didn't see is that staying silent was already a heavy burden, one he carried alone. After 60, kindness is still a beautiful gift, but it needs boundaries. You have every right to say no to things that leave you drained. You don't have to please everyone in order to be lovable. A gentle no doesn't make you a bad person. It simply means you've learned how to value yourself, too. But sometimes, it's not just others who hurt us. It's how we view life, through a lens that's too rosy, too forgiving. In the next part, we'll explore why misplaced optimism can quietly become a double-edged sword as we grow older. That year, Margaret, 70 years old, took money out of her retirement savings to help her granddaughter start a small business. She trusted her completely. After all, it was her granddaughter, family. But a few months later, the phone calls stopped. Texts went unanswered, and that small business, it had never existed. Many of us grow up believing that family would never hurt us. True friends always have good intentions, and that's a beautiful belief, but it's not always true. Growing older doesn't protect us from being taken advantage of. In fact, seniors are among the most vulnerable, and the most common harm often comes from the people closest to them. There are warning signs, red flags, that show up again and again. People who borrow money but never repay it. People who only call when they need something. Relatives who make you feel guilty for not doing enough, even when you've already given so much. And because of love or age or fear of losing a relationship, we ignore the signs. A man named Gerald, 68, once shared a community workshop. I had a friend from high school. We used to be very close. But now, every month, he calls with a new reason to borrow money. I kept giving, thinking that's what friends do, but then I realized he never once asked how I was doing. Gerald didn't just lose money. He lost trust, and the feeling that he was being respected. After 60, peace of mind is more valuable than any relationship. And sometimes, to protect that peace, you need the courage to admit, not every relationship is worth keeping. Just because someone is family doesn't mean they're good for you. Just because someone was a good friend doesn't mean they still are. You have the right to reselect the people you keep close. To surround yourself with those who truly value you, not just what you give. And once you've done that, here comes the next question. Do you really need to keep expanding your circle at all? Or is it time to embrace a more focused kind of connection? One that feeds your soul, not drains it? In the next part, we'll talk about a habit that seems good on the surface, but might be quietly wearing you out as you grow older. Ruth was a 62-year-old widow living in Colorado. After retiring, she joined just about every group she could find. A book club, a dance class, a baking group, even Spanish lessons. She was always busy, always had someone to go out with. But one day, she called her daughter, crying, and said, "Honey, I'm standing in the middle of the crowd, but I feel completely alone." So many people, especially after 60, are afraid of loneliness. They rush to make friends, to join every group, to say yes to every invitation, because they believe that being surrounded by people will make life less empty. But the truth is, loneliness isn't about how many people are around you. It's about whether anyone truly sees you. At a certain age, we stop needing a lot of friends and start needing the right ones. You don't need a phone full of contacts. What you really need is someone who can sit beside you on a hard day, listen without judgment, and simply say, "I'm here." Harold, a 67-year-old retired teacher, once shared that after he stopped working, he joined 3 different social clubs in town just to keep busy. But then he admitted, "I realized most conversations stayed on the surface. I started feeling drained, pretending to be cheerful when I didn't even want to leave the house." So he quietly stepped away from some of those groups. and started taking morning walks with his neighbor, a quiet man who didn't say much, but always listened. And Harold said, "I feel lighter now, even if I'm only talking to one person." Quality always matters more than quantity. You don't need to be everywhere. You don't need to know everyone to feel that your life still matters. Start being more intentional with your connections. Prioritize the ones that are honest, heartfelt, and real, even if there are only a few. Because sometimes one genuine conversation over a cup of tea is worth more than a whole room full of small talk and polite laughter. And once we've learned to be more mindful about friendships, it might be time to take a deeper look at the most familiar relationships of all, our own family. Could it be that sometimes even family love, when misplaced, can cause us pain? Let's explore this in the next section. Why we should be careful about placing all our hopes in family ties. Frank was a successful man, a former aerospace engineer. He retired at 65 with a solid nest egg. He had a spacious home, 2 cars, and investments that still paid out reliably. But when I met him at a mindfulness class for older adults, he quietly said, "I've got enough money to go anywhere I want, but no one left to go with." We're taught that the more money we have, the safer our future will be. And it's true, money matters. It gives us access to healthcare, independence, and the ability to avoid becoming a burden on our kids. But if we start believing that money alone is enough, we're buying into a dangerous illusion. Real security doesn't just come from a full bank account. It comes from a full heart. Some people spend so much time focused on saving and stockpiling, they forget how to actually live. They're afraid to spend on themselves, afraid to invest in new experiences, afraid to buy a plane ticket to visit an old friend, and eventually they find themselves with enough money to buy anything, but no time or joy left to enjoy it. Jeanette, a 70-year-old widow, once shared that for 20 years after her husband passed, she lived as frugally as possible. No vacations, no new clothes, no community events. She told me, "I just wanted to save everything to leave for my kids." But on her 70th birthday, her eldest son called and said, "Mom, all we want is for you to enjoy life. Your happiness means more than money." That same day, she booked her first vacation in 2 decades. Money is a tool, not the goal. Let your money serve the life you want. Don't let your life be ruled by the fear of not having enough. True security comes from good health, meaningful relationships, and the small joys you create every day. You don't need a 6-figure bank account to feel steady. You just need to live fully with what you have and invest in what truly matters. And speaking of what truly matters, there's one thing that's even more valuable than money: your health. In the next section, we'll talk about why, after 60, taking care of your health isn't just an option, it's a responsibility. Larry, age 72, used to be the kind of guy who never went in for regular checkups. "I feel fine," he'd say. "All I need is good sleep and a decent meal." But then one day, after feeling unusually fatigued, he finally saw a doctor and learned he had been living with type 2 diabetes for quite some time without knowing it. It was something that could have been caught early and managed if he had just gone for a simple annual exam. After 60, your health is no longer something you can afford to ignore. It's the foundation for everything else. Without your health, that dream vacation becomes out of reach. Without your health, even a simple family dinner can feel overwhelming. The sad truth? Many people don't take their health seriously until their body starts screaming through pain. "I'm fine." 3 words older adults say all the time. But "I'm fine" doesn't always mean you're okay. Sometimes silence is just the body storing up problems until they erupt when you're least able to handle them. Susan, 66, had been dealing with ongoing back pain, but she brushed it off, thinking, "That's just what getting older feels like." It wasn't until the pain spread down her leg and she couldn't stand up one morning that she finally went to the hospital. The diagnosis, a severe herniated disc. Had she gone in earlier, physical therapy might have been enough. But now, she was facing surgery. Your health is the one asset you can't borrow and you can't buy back. Listen to your body. It's always communicating with you. The question is, are you listening? Get your annual checkups. Eat well, sleep enough, and stay active with light movement. And most of all, don't think of self-care as selfish. Taking care of yourself is an act of love for you and for the people who love you. And once your health is being cared for the way it deserves to be, the next thing that needs your attention is your inner life. Let's move into the next part, where we'll talk about the heavy burden of resentment and regret, and why it might be time to finally let them go so you can live the rest of your life with more lightness and peace. I once met an elderly man named James at a local community event. He was over 75, but still had the habit of journaling every morning. When I asked, "What do you write about every day, sir?" he gave a gentle smile and said, "I write letters to my younger brother, the one I haven't spoken to in over 30 years. Growing older brings many things: wisdom, perspective, and sometimes old wounds that never quite healed. There are relationships that once hurt us, decisions we regret, and if we're not careful, we carry those emotional bags, like heavy suitcases, through a stage of life that you feel lighter. Resentment is like a sharp hook that stays buried in your heart, hurting you more than anyone else. And regret whispers quietly, over and over, if only I had forgiven sooner. If only I had the courage to do what I really wanted back then." But the truth is, none of us can go back. The only thing we can do is let go, so we can move forward lighter, brighter. Elaine, 69, had gone more than 20 years without speaking to her sister. It started over something small, a misunderstanding, followed by pride and then years of silence. She always believed she was right, that she had been treated unfairly. But when her sister was hospitalized after a stroke, all Elaine could do was sit outside the hospital room and cry. "I waited too long to forgive," she told me. Now, there's no one left to say it to. After that, she started writing letters to herself, to the people she had once resented, letters she never sent. And she said, "Strangely, once I wrote it all down and forgave, I slept better." Forgiveness isn't a gift you give someone else. It's a gift you give yourself. And as for regret, if it exists, let it become a lesson, not a chain that holds you back. Try this. Write down something you regret. Then ask yourself, what can I do today to make sure I don't have to regret something like this again? Because life is still moving forward, and you deserve to live the rest of it with a light heart. And when your soul begins to feel lighter, you might start to hear another voice, the one deep inside, reminding you that you still have so much left to do, learn, and enjoy. But are you holding yourself back just because you think, "I'm too old to start over"? Let's move into the next part, where you'll discover why turning 60, 70, or even 80 has never been too late to begin something new. I met Helen one evening at a painting class at our local town library. She was 76 years old. When I asked her why she started learning to paint at this age, she smiled and said, "Because I spent my whole life doing what others needed. Now it's time to do something that makes my heart come alive." There's a quiet but dangerous belief many people carry, that after a certain age, we no longer need to learn, that there's no reason to change, that "I'm too old, what's left to do anyway?" But the truth is, the human brain is capable of learning for a lifetime. Science calls it neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new neural connections, even in your 70s, 80s, and beyond. More importantly, your spirit doesn't age. It only grows old when you stop dreaming, stop trying new things, stop exploring who you are. Take Robert, 68. He used to work in a machine shop. After retiring, he started learning to play piano from scratch. At first, he doubted himself. His hands weren't as steady. His memory wasn't what it used to be. But after a year, he could play his late wife's favorite song, a gift to honor what would have been their 40th anniversary. And he said, "No one looks at me and sees an artist, but now I see the artist in myself, someone I never let exist when I was younger." Growing older isn't the end of the story. It's simply the next chapter. And you can begin anything, learn a skill, explore a passion, travel, write, or simply love yourself in a way you never allowed before. Learning isn't always about big achievements. Sometimes it's just how we keep our spirit alive, curious, and young. So ask yourself, what dream did you once have, but left behind because you were too busy, too afraid, or thought you were too old? Because today is a beautiful day to begin again. But whatever it is you choose to begin, there's one lesson more important than any class or textbook can offer. Learning how to open your heart and accept help instead of quietly carrying everything on your own. Let's move into the next part, where we explore why being independent doesn't mean doing everything alone, and how asking for help can be one of the strongest, bravest things you can do. Janet, 70, lives alone in a quiet suburb. One day, she slipped in her kitchen and ended up sitting on the floor for over an hour, unable to get up by herself. When a neighbor eventually found her and helped her up, she burst into tears, not from pain, but from shame. "I just didn't want anyone to think I'm weak or a burden," she said. Many older adults carry a quiet sense of pride, the belief that being independent means being able to handle everything alone. And yes, independence is a beautiful thing, but sometimes we confuse independence with never needing anyone. The truth is, asking for help isn't weakness. It's a form of strength. There are so many people who silently endure things. Chronic back pain, afternoon loneliness, financial stress, all because they're afraid to speak up. They worry about being judged. They worry they'll become a burden. They worry about being a bother. But think about it this way. If someone you love, your child, your sibling, your friend, needed help, would you think they were a burden? Carl, 73, tried to cope with mild depression on his own after losing his wife. He didn't talk to anyone. He didn't reach out to a counselor. He just carried the pain quietly. Until one day, an old friend over coffee asked him, "Are you really doing okay?" And Carl broke down in tears. That moment changed everything. From that day forward, he started attending a grief support group for widowers. He later said, "I thought I had to handle it on my own, but just having someone listen was the start of healing." We weren't made to live this life in isolation. We were made to connect, to give, and to receive. Accepting help is one way you open the door to love, both from others and for yourself. When you say, "I need help," you're giving someone else the chance to show their love. When you share what you're going through, you give yourself a chance to finally feel lighter. You deserve support, not because you're weak, but because you're human. And once you allow yourself to receive, you'll also learn how to release, to let go of the old thoughts and wounds that have weighed you down for far too long. In our final section, we'll explore why your past doesn't have to define your future, and how you can begin living more fully, starting today. Walter, 75, was once a promising musician, but after a major career setback at age 40, he put his guitar in the closet and never touched it again. "I thought that was it," he said. "Youth passed, and it took my dreams with it. After that, I just existed. I stopped dreaming of anything new." Then one day, his 9-year-old granddaughter asked him to teach her a few simple chords. That day, he took the guitar out for the first time in 35 years. And that same day, he started writing a new song. Your past is part of you, but it's not all of you. It happened. It left its marks. But you still have the right to choose what comes next. You are not what you've lost. You are what remains, and how you choose to live with it. How many of us carry an unfinished story in our hearts? A dream we never saw through? A friendship that faded? A decision we regret? And because of those things, we live a little smaller, believe in ourselves a little less, sometimes even stop hoping altogether. But what if today was the first page of a brand new chapter? What would you write? Marie, 71, got divorced when she was young. She spent decades believing, "I made one big mistake. That means I don't deserve another chance at love." She lived alone for nearly 40 years. Then one day, she met David at a senior yoga class. They became friends, then best friends, and eventually, something more. They had a small backyard wedding, both in their 70s. Marie said, "I used to think my heart was only for remembering, but it turns out it still knows how to feel. It's never too late to rewrite a part of your story. Let the past teach you, but don't let it trap you. And as long as you're breathing, as long as there's one more day to live, there's still one more chance to begin again. Ask yourself, am I living as if the best is already behind me? Or am I living as if the best might still be on its way? Dear friend, if you've made it this far with me, then maybe you believe what I believe, that growing older isn't the end of the book. It's the start of a new chapter, one that can be lighter, brighter, and truly yours. If something in today's video spoke to you, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Are you learning to let something go? Or are you beginning something new? Your story matters, and I want to hear it. And don't forget to hit subscribe so we can keep exploring these meaningful moments together, especially for you, someone entering one of the most beautiful stages of life.